Hi guys, hope you're well. So today's video doesn't really have any script behind it. It's just kind of a general, let's say, brain dump of what's been happening this year with me, what lessons that I've learned, and things that I think might benefit you guys as we move into the next year. So, first off, I've been very busy with my new role as a functional medicine practitioner at Med Institute in Cyprus. And also I've been kind of formulating the Two Paths healing program. So that's been taking up a lot of my time. And I know when I started this channel, I kind of committed to doing videos every week. And unfortunately, just haven't had the time to do that. Just been extremely busy with clients in clinic and also remotely. There's a lot of sick people out there, and it's heartbreaking, on one side of things, however rewarding on the other. So apologize if I haven't been able to release as much content as I wanted to. I have a little bit of a break now, and I'm hoping to release some videos in the next couple of weeks. So regarding to, the lessons that I've learned, this year with what's happened with my own situation over actually the past few years. I think a lot of you guys know my story. It's pretty well documented. If you don't, I would suggest that you go back and have a look at some of my initial videos where I talked about, my journey through the world of kind of chronic illness. And, one of the major lessons that I learned through recovery, I think, was the fact that healing and health and advice around the topics can be very subjective, right? It definitely depends on something as simple as where you live on the planet. So I have a story that might illustrate that. So, when I first got ill, I recall having some symptoms, and I went to my neurologist in Budapest in Hungary, where I was living at the time. And he sent me away for a brain scan, came back, had a lesion, and then he put the idea of multiple sclerosis in my head. Literally put it in my head. And, it's not something you want to hear when you go for a random checkup to a doctor. So that put me in a tailspin. And at the time, I kind of questioned that because I hadn't really had much interaction with the Hungarian healthcare system. So based off that, I then went to the UK, where I'm from, and I saw 2 or 3 neurologists there, all who looked at my scans and kind of backed up the same fact, which is I have multiple sclerosis, and told me that I needed to do a lumbar puncture, which is a pretty invasive procedure where they stick a needle into your spine and actually extract some CSF, so cerebral spinal fluid, from your back, and they test that for inflammatory markers. So it doesn't sound like a very nice procedure to do. But when I was actually going through all of that, I was also actually residing in Barcelona at the time. And after about 3 months of thinking I had multiple sclerosis, going into the multiple sclerosis groups, having my symptoms increase, looking at ways to deal with multiple sclerosis, looking at the different medications that came with it, I'd basically resigned myself to the fact that I had multiple sclerosis and I was going to be in a wheelchair in 5-10 years. It was that powerful. And I remember thinking to myself that, something was just not right about the whole diagnosis, and it just didn't feel right because I wasn't displaying any, visible symptoms of multiple sclerosis. So at the time I went to a doctor in Barcelona who, after a couple of tests, came back and basically said the complete opposite of what the guys in the UK had said and what the doctor in Hungary had said, and said that you're not displaying any symptoms of multiple sclerosis. You have lesions on your brain, but we see that all the time, right? We see that in people with migraines. We see that in anybody over the age of 50 has lesions on their brain. It's not a big deal. Go home, you're good. So you can imagine from my perspective, having gone around that circle, kind of have these thoughts in my brain constantly, having sleepless nights about it, to be told by a neurologist in Barcelona that I don't have multiple sclerosis and I need to stop worrying about it. It kind of made me understand that, health is very subjective and it can definitely be related to countries and borders as well, in the way that they diagnose, in the way that they treat, in the way that they look for signs, right? So it's very dependent on these type of things. And a lot of the time, especially in the UK, I kind of had a feeling that every doctor that I saw there wasn't really analyzing anything. They weren't really going into depth on my case. They were just basically backing up what the previous doctor had said, because that was the easy thing to do. It's almost like they had this Hippocratic oath and they cannot argue with any previous diagnosis. It's just not what they do. So that got me thinking that, maybe healthcare is dependent on where you live in the world, right? Let's say if you live in the US, where you have very much I would say, profit-orientated healthcare system. You've got the insurance companies that work with big pharma, that work with the doctors, and it's one big loop, right? So maybe that's different to having healthcare in Spain, or having healthcare in the UK, or having healthcare in Asia. And this has been probably the root of my discovery. And I've been very blessed. I was born in a time, and I kind of came through a time where it was very easy for me to travel. I left the UK when I was in my early 20s. I was very blessed to live in 5 different countries. I visited over 70 countries in my life so far, and I'm perfectly, aware that a lot of people don't have that capability. I mean, with countries that are basically closing borders right now than opening them. And, I was very lucky to kind of live in that time. I'm very blessed to have that opportunity that a lot of people don't have right now. But I think that also allowed me to understand that in different countries, things are done differently as well, especially when it comes to healthcare. So, there's a couple of different examples that I can give you. Obviously, my example with multiple sclerosis, being diagnosed differently in different countries. And then you look at stuff like cancer. I mean, cancer is very kind of close to my heart, not literally, but my mother, when I was young, passed away through cancer in her 40s. And, I'd always thought that, the doctors knew best, and that she had incurable cancer and it came back, and, they did everything possible that they could do. They used chemotherapy, but in the end, her body gave up, and that's why she died. But honestly, in the last 5 years, I have started to change my opinions on that. I've started to question that. I started to look back through my mother's files, and I started to see how medicine was done back in, the early 2000s. And, it's really shocking, some of the stuff that came out just from my mother's case. I wasn't aware that there are more than one type of chemotherapy. And in the UK, they predominantly use one type of chemotherapy. But if you have the money and you have the resources, if you go over to Switzerland, they have 5 or 6 different types of chemotherapy. They actually have customized chemotherapy that's based on the type of tumors that you have in your body. So if you have the money, you can actually go over there and you have a much better chance of surviving cancer just based on the postcode or the country code that you live in. Isn't that insane, right? Because when you're living in a country, all you think is these doctors in white coats absolutely know everything, and you don't question it, because why would you, right? They've done 7 years at university, they have the certificates on the wall. Why would you question that? Okay. So, that's been a pretty big realization. And then you think of stuff like, parasites, which is what we deal with a lot at the clinic in here in Cyprus. And, a lot of Western countries and Western doctors, they believe that parasites do not exist in people in the West. They think it's a third world thing that happens in India or Asia or South America, but they don't have parasites in the West, which couldn't be further from the truth. Okay, we see people coming into our clinic from the West, from the UK, from Australia, from the US, who are riddled with parasites, okay, and infested with parasites. But they've been to numerous doctors in their own countries, and they've just been passed from pillar to post, and it's just been one roundabout, and they've been getting more and more confused, and they come to us and we address, some of the root causes of their problems, parasites, Lyme, this type of stuff, and they get better, which is incredible, right? If you think about India, they've been dealing with parasites. They use certain medications, they use certain Ayurvedic practices, they use all sorts of different things. They've known about this stuff for decades. But in the West, we follow more of a conventional antibiotic, a procedure where you come in for a bunch of tests and then we send you for another bunch of tests. And then it just becomes one big cycle. And at the end of the day, you spend thousands and thousands of pounds, right? Just going around and around and around. And, if you're watching this channel, you know exactly what I'm talking about because you've been on that roundabout. So, it got me thinking that what do we do? I mean, if you're not being told the truth and, the actual system that you're living in, it depends where you live on the world, it's dependent on what kind of treatment and cares or medications that you're going to get. What do you do when, you don't have the ability to travel or, to spend money jetting around the world trying to find different treatments? I mean, it's extremely hard. And that's why I've set up the Two Paths Healing Program, and I've set up my newsletter for people who just want to be kept up to date. Because I feel with my experience and the network of doctors and scientists from India, from Cyprus, from Europe, from Spain, we work with nutritionists in South America. I believe that I've managed to bring together a fantastic network of people who have a wide variety of different experiences, and that knowledge coming together is what's helping heal our patients. So, I feel that there's a lot of arrogance in healthcare, especially, certain doctors. It's kind of like very dangerous, that level of arrogance that I know best, you don't know anything, listen to me, right? We know that healthcare doesn't work like that. Everything's subjective around science and healthcare. I mean, you just seen what happened recently in the last couple of years, right? It was very subjective to which country you lived in. Okay, that's clear. So when it comes to healthcare, it's better to have more minds around different topics working together to find a solution, rather than, we only have one way of doing this. And obviously, that gets infiltrated with profit, money, and that's a kind of healthcare system you don't want to be moving towards. And I see that often. We see that with our patients who, just to give you an example, one of our patients that we saw a couple of weeks ago had a document, probably about 40 pages of tests from the US, diagnoses, different diagnoses, recommendations to see 5 different doctors. And I just looked at that file, and to any normal, sane person that would look at that, it would terrify you. So this patient was obviously extremely scared, had been told that she had a multiple variety of different kind of, ailments and conditions. And even with my remote patients, I see that constantly. When they send me their tests, when they send me their scans and the doctor's notes read like an obituary. It's just horrific, some of the stuff that's put on there. And, that contributes to a big part of the problem. So how do we deal with this moving forward? I mean, let's say you're dealing with an illness and you're listening to your doctors, or you're trying to find answers online. It's difficult. The way that I've been trying to deal with this myself, because to be honest with you, I'm coming sometimes from a place of extreme anger, because I see the way the system works, and because I've been able to live in different countries and speak to people all over the world about how they treat different conditions, I kind of can step back and look at the bigger picture and see, some of the lies that are being spread. And it's extremely frustrating, and I try not to let that anger go up into my head. And I know sometimes in my videos that comes across, but I'm working on it, because I just think we live in a very divisive time where, in any walk of life, be it, the recent events that are happening in the world, political parties, it's very polarized. You're either on one side or the other. There doesn't seem to be much middle ground. And what do you do, when everything's so polarized? And if you go down one path, somebody else is going to be contesting that. I think for me, what's helped definitely is it comes from some of some teachings, and one of my kind of spiritual teachers and some books that I've read is a gentleman called Ram Dass, who was big into psychedelics back in the day, and went over to India and kind of a very enlightened spiritual soul. And one of the key messages that he came out with, and just very simple, was, whenever you do something in life, right, just do it from a place of love and always tell the truth. Okay. And this resonated with me. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to accomplish with the whole Two Paths program, and accomplish with my clients, is to tell the truth as I know best, and try to come from a place of love, because I am absolutely sure that there are a lot of doctors out there who are trying to help their patients, but they just haven't been given the right toolkit. They haven't been taught the right stuff at university. I mean, if you talk about the West, when doctors go to university, they spend 1 month learning about infectious diseases, which is crazy, because a lot of illnesses right now are infectious diseases. So let's say a doctor who grew up in India might be able to treat you a lot better than somebody who went through a UK health system, for example. And then you got to look at the other factors of it. I mean, coming from the UK, coming from an Indian background, when I was growing up, my granddad and people in my family, like in Indian tradition, when you are growing up, if you are not a lawyer, an accountant, a pharmacist, or a doctor, you're kind of a failure. It's just one of those cultural things, especially kind of my mother and father came over to England in the early 70s. And, that was all part of it. And then recently I started to also think about that. And when you look at the statistics and you look at like 60-70% of doctors in England are of Indian origin, okay, background, either second generation or first generation. But it's incredible, right? Why is that? Is it because, they all want to help people and they all want to get into that profession because they want to help people? I don't believe that. I mean, I think personally, Russell Peters was a very famous Indian kind of comedian from Canada, did a very funny stint on Indian doctors where he said he would never go to an Indian doctor because the majority of Indian doctors are actually forced into the profession by their parents. So he doesn't want to go to a doctor who's been forced into the profession of being a doctor by their parents. And, you know, I saw Indian doctors when I was going through my my process in the UK, and you know what came across was a lot of arrogance and not a lot of understanding. And I'm thinking to myself that maybe that doctor didn't actually want to be a doctor. Maybe that person was forced by their parents to study because it's seen as a very high status thing to be a doctor in the UK from an Indian family. So you got to think about all these things when you're looking at your doctor. I'm not saying all Indian doctors are bad, obviously not, right? I'm just saying that, you know, if I want to go see a doctor, I want to know that that doctor has looked at every possible situation, has traveled the world, has spoken to scientists and doctors in different parts of the planet, and understands my case from a very round perspective, right? I'd rather see that doctor than some doctor who kind of just follows a script and gets paid well, and that probably at some point is overworked and stressed, and probably at some point didn't actually want to be a doctor in the first place. I know which type of person I would see. And that's why I think that in the future, especially when it comes to chronic illnesses, I think the time of the old school doctor with the white coat, stethoscope, and all the certificates in the background, that time is slowly coming to a close because firstly, they're not healing anybody, right? I mean, you guys wouldn't be on this channel if doctors could heal you. And secondly, we're learning so much about the human body that's not been taught in university anymore. Or as university ends up being, as I said in previous videos, is funded by Big Pharma. So, you know, they learn a very strict kind of curriculum. And that doesn't take into account region, you know, infectious diseases, you know, pollutants in the atmosphere, the stuff that we're learning about the brain. You know, I talk a lot about that, a lot of Joe Dispenza stuff that we're learning recently. So where does that leave us? I think that leaves us towards more of a path where people are turning to those people who've actually healed themselves, right? Because they've been through it and they've come out the other side and they've lived to tell a kind of a story, and they're actually becoming the new healers. And I'm not saying that everybody who's healed himself can go out and start, you know, a practice and start healing people. It doesn't work like that, right? You need to understand how the human body works. You need to do some sort of certification. You know, I spent 3 years doing my functional medicine license. But what I've learned over the last few years has just been absolutely incredible. And it's because I've learned from some of the best minds in the world. You know, I've learned under one of the world's top parasitologists. I've spoken to scientists in India. I currently work with a Russian doctor who has been treating people with incurable conditions for 40 years. And he comes at chronic illness at a very, very different way than I've been used to. So, you know, I've been a sponge. I've been soaking all that in over the past few years. And it's just been absolutely incredible. And not only did I use that knowledge to heal myself, I'm now actually helping other people understand how to heal themselves. Because as I always say, you know, once you take that healing back into your own hands, that's when the magic starts to happen. And often we do not need extravagant procedures. We do not need 300 supplements, you know, loads of medications, right? We just need to be pointed in the right direction. And we need to kind of identify the root causes. And that's what we do at Two Paths. Hi guys. So it's been 6 months since we started the Two Paths channel. So I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for your support, your kind messages, all your comments. You know, without you, there wouldn't be a channel. Thanks for the donations that came through as well. It really helped us grow the channel. So in order to kind of celebrate that, I've got some exciting news. So we officially have our Two Paths website up and running now. It's at www.twolifepaths.com. And I urge you guys to go there and to sign up to the newsletter. So when you go there, there's going to be a subscribe now at the bottom. And the reason that I want you to subscribe to the newsletter is I have a lot of special content to share with you guys that I cannot share on social media. I'm sure you guys are aware of the censorship these days. People's channels get shut down if they're not saying the right thing. I have to be a little bit cautious about that, but there are a lot of information that I want to share with you, and I just can't share it on this channel. So if you go to the website and you subscribe, you will be officially put into our mailing list, and I'll be able to talk to you directly without any censorship, and I can share some of the secrets and some bonus content that I have been wanting to share for quite a while with you guys. And I really hope that you go and subscribe now. So guys, thanks again. And I look forward to communicating with you directly through the website, through the newsletter. And you're gonna be absolutely shocked with some of the stuff that I have to share with you. Okay, thanks guys, take care, have a good day, bye. So guys, I hope I haven't bored you with that, but you know, as I said, I've just had a lot of feelings within myself because I see the mistakes being made by current practitioners, and I see the loop that people get into, and it does make me angry because I know part of that is profit motivated. But that's not to say that's in all cases. Obviously, there are doctors out there that are really trying to help their patients. It's just they don't know what to do because they've only operated in that one country and they're not familiar with what people are doing all over the world. You know, as somebody who's been lucky enough to travel, right, and has been dedicated the last 3 years of my life to this, right, I have been able to understand how people operate in different countries, which I am now using with my patients and in my program. And the results are just absolutely amazing, you know. And so guys, I just wanted to leave you with that. And, you know, I will try to release as much stuff as possible. But I hope you take, if anything, from this video, what's helped me with all this conflict and this polarization and the commoditization of absolutely everything in this world. Just that element of going into your heart space, okay, and coming from a place of love with whoever you're dealing with, okay? If people don't agree with you, come from a place of love, okay? Because everybody's scared right now. There's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of people who are weaponizing that fear for their own benefit, okay? So as long as you tell the truth, and as long as you come from a place of love, right, you're gonna be in a better place. And as I always say, when it comes to chronic illness, okay, if you're operating from a place of love, from your heart, when you drop down into your heart, okay, fear can't exist, right? It's the antithesis to love, right? So when you are operating from love, your body is thanking you, okay? You're operating at the right frequency, okay? And you are healing. So guys, thanks for your time. I wish you love, and we'll speak soon. Take care. Bye.